You read the title, you saw the thumbnail. Today, I'm going to defend Sig Sauer and the P320. That and more after we hear a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by the Modern Gun School. This is an accredited online university that is built by gun people for gun people. It's designed to be streamlined and cost-effective, unlike the other place that'll rip through people's entire GI Bill. Whether you're looking to break into the gun industry or you just want to learn some stuff, check them out at the Modern Gun School and make sure that you tell them that I sent you. Let's get back to the video. Now, recently there have been a couple lawsuits that have come down in the whole Sig Sauer P320 debacle. And this one that we're going to talk about here today, Sig Sauer simultaneously lost and won. If that sounds strange to you, we are talking about Massachusetts here. This is going to be a recurring theme. Just fair warning. In 2018, the Cambridge Police Department adopts the Sig Sauer P320 pistol and starts issuing them as the primary service weapon for their officers for use in their official duties. Sometime after that, an officer that we're going to refer to as Jack has an accident, and that accident results in some pretty serious injuries to his lower extremities, shall we say. He then files a lawsuit against Sig Sauer claiming that their defective design resulted in his injuries. And that decision just came down from the jury a couple days ago. This is what it said. Did Jack prove by a preponderance of the evidence that defendant Sig Sauer Inc. breached the implied warranty of merchantability by defectively designing the P320 pistol? Jury says yes. If you answered yes to question 1, did Jack prove by a preponderance of the evidence that defendant's Sig Sauer Inc.'s defective design of the P320 pistol caused him injury? Verdict, yes. Did plaintiff Jack prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the defendant Sig Sauer Inc. breached the implied warranty of merchantability by failing to give adequate warnings regarding risks associated with the P320 pistol? Verdict, yes. If you answered yes to question 3, did plaintiff Jack prove by a preponderance of the evidence that defendant Sig Sauer Inc.'s failure to give adequate warnings regarding risks associated with the P320 pistol cause him injury? Verdict, no. If you answered yes to both questions 1 and 2, or both questions 3 and 4, please proceed to question 5. Otherwise, your deliberations are complete. Question 5. Did Sig Sauer Inc. prove by preponderance of the evidence that the plaintiff, Jack, voluntarily and unreasonably used the P320 pistol, knowing it was defective and dangerous, and was injured as a result? Yes. If you answered no to questions 5, please proceed to questions 6 and 7. Otherwise, your deliberations are complete. So to translate that into regular people speak, plain old English, the court says the Sig Sauer P320 is defectively designed. And that defective design resulted in injuries. And you might hear those facts and you say, all right, well, this might be part and parcel of what we've been talking about here for the last several months and years about the 320 and its track record. Is this more evidence to add to the pile? And then you read the third fact, which is that Sig Sauer is not liable for the damages because of the way the officer conducted himself. That sounds really weird. So you have to dig a little bit deeper before you find out that the officer, in this instance, in a miraculous Massachusetts moment, decided that he was going to carry his service pistol without a holster. He's just going to stuff it in his waistband. Look, I got to do a flashback for a second. Up to this point, many of these quote-unquote uncommanded discharges with the SIG 320 or the M18 have been associated with law enforcement incidents. And it's pretty common knowledge at this point in time that law enforcement communities simply have a firearms competency problem. They just do. It's almost cliche at this point in time how bad many of the weapons handling skills and safety protocols associated with many law enforcement units just are. Okay, so first off, striker fired pistol, no holster, in the waistband, running around, gun goes off. Case closed. Nomination for Darwin Award initiated. However, it keeps getting better. What do you think the defective design of the Sig Sauer P320, as claimed by the officer, is? Is this some kind of defect in the sear? Is this like a very technical analysis of the fire control unit, the frame, and the slide interaction? Is this the weight of the trigger or something along that vein? Nope. It's that the issued weapon did not have an external safety on it. There are variants of the 320 that have external safeties on it, and Sig Sauer offered that law enforcement agency a model with an external safety on it, and they declined. Massachusetts, again, the weapon is defectively designed because it does not have an external flippy lever on it. I put up a poll about this. Should handguns have a manual external safety? And the broad consensus is that they should be a choice, not a mandate. But also, incompetent people exist. Now, there's a whole bunch of states out there that have a lot of dumb regulations when it comes to firearms and what the citizens can have. Think California, like magazine disconnect, magazine capacity, no threaded barrels, all that sort of stuff. I think that we should throw all of that out. But what we should absolutely have is a law enforcement compliance criteria list. And this is like the first 2 years somebody's on the force, they have to carry this weapon, probationary weapon, and then they can attend on their own dime additional training to move past that weapon if they care to. And I think that would fix a whole lot of problems. We're talking criteria like internal hammer-fired guns with like a 15-pound trigger, grip safety, trigger safety, manual external safety, big loaded chamber indicators, a magazine disconnect, quadruple retention holsters, like all that sort of stuff, because we have been here before. Annals of history, go back and extract out when the Glock was initially fielded. There were a whole bunch of incidents of these negligent discharges, and they were legitimate negligent discharges because cops were running around with like their finger on the trigger. And when you're carrying a service revolver that's double action, single action, or single action only, you can do that sort of stuff, and it may not create a problem. The problem may not precipitate, but when you're working with a striker fire pistol, there's a certain level of aptitude that must be maintained or you're going to have a problem. Exhibit A. If you remember back to It Ends Today, Sig said that this was all a bunch of anti-Sig stuff that was coming out for the purposes of damaging the company and also for folks to avoid accountability and responsibility. And I gotta say that I agree with Sig in this instant. This actually turns out to be one of only several other lawsuits by the same firm that is targeting Sig. And I don't know the criteria involved in the rest of those incidents, but if they're going after the manual safety is part of a defect in the design, that is exceptionally dangerous. In the lockup downstairs, I probably have 100 handguns. And I want to say maybe 5 of those handguns have a manual safety on them. Like my Desert Eagle, I have a 1911. There's a couple other ones in there that have manual safeties. But by and large, the technology has advanced to the point, and the training has changed to the point where we no longer regard the manual safety in most instances as a viable tool. Now, when we're talking about lowest common denominator stuff, when we're talking about issuing these weapons to a bunch of fucking smooth-brained idiots, yeah, I can totally understand why this product exists and it should be an option. But mandating it through lawfare, I gotta take Sig's side on this one. So in closing, what I would say today is this entire time when it comes to the Sig 320, what I've been on about is the Second Amendment implications. And this has Second Amendment implications as well, in the wrong direction. I have no idea what the political affiliations of that firm are, but I can only guess that it's probably not the right way. And I have to say that if there are legitimate concerns out there about the design of the Sig 320, that water should not be muddied with this kind of political activism and responsibility avoidance. This is clearly not what we're talking about, and this has the potential to cause long-term damage. So the reason I brought this to you today is so that you are properly informed on the political climate as it results to this and the long-term fallout that could result. I think that I've taken a pretty objective tack when it comes to the P320 situation. I look at it from the raw perspective of Second Amendment advocacy. And that's how I've tried to guide my positions on what or should or should not happen with the Sig 320. I'm a Sig owner. I hope that they are able to address whatever underlying issues may or may not exist. Sig's contemporary behavior as of late, notwithstanding, when it comes to this specific incident, if you see anybody out there that is just a Sig hater that is saying that this is a good thing, they are either radically uninformed about the details of this case, or you should probably just stop listening to them altogether, because this is clearly very bad. And that's what I got for you guys today.